First of all, thank you all for helping this channel grow. We truly appreciate the support. Making these documentaries isn't easy. We do weeks, sometimes months of research. None of the narrator lines is copied from any website. All the lines were written by us. Thank you. Hope you enjoy.
You're watching the Flyboy Gang story. Sit back and relax. The Flyboy Gang has always been the underdogs on the drill scene. For over a decade, the FBG crew been delivering drill classics. Young, Dutchy, Duck, Billionaire Black, King Lil J, Cash, and other FBG members are all really important in the drill world. This is a powerful story about a group of talented kids who were followed by dark clouds. It seemed like the Flyboy Gang could never catch a break. Members either went to jail or got murdered before they could make it big. If you're not a big FBG fan, you're about to become one tonight. In the drill world, the Flyboy Gang are looked at as superheroes and OTF are looked at as villains. This story is not only important to the drill world, but it's important to the hip-hop world as well. Drill is one of the biggest genres in hip-hop, maybe the biggest next to trap. And it's safe to say that drill wouldn't be this huge today if it wasn't for the Flyboy Gang. This is their story. Hope you got your snacks and drinks ready, because I'm about to take you all to Chicago on 63rd of St. Lawrence. The Flyboy Gang was started around 2011 by Romello Smart, also known as FBG Young. Young and his family moved to 518 East 64th Street around 2005. Young grew up with a group of sisters and 3 brothers, including Els and FBG Cash. Him and some of his siblings has different fathers. Young's father is a guy by the name of Manny. Manny was allegedly a hustler back in the day. Him and Young's mother Sonia began dating in the early 90s. Manny treated all her kids as if they were his. The family didn't struggle like most families in the city. Manny was a provider. Young and his siblings didn't go without. Manny and Sonia allegedly spoiled Young as a child. He was the life of the party at family events. Young enjoyed dancing. At an early age, he became interested in making music. Young parents were pretty strict. They had early curfews and wasn't allowed to go certain places. Young and his siblings spent most of their time together at home. Manny and Sonia were fun parents. Although they were strict, they joked around a lot. Holidays were special. Every Christmas, Young and his siblings received nice gifts. School clothes was never an issue for the kids. They all dressed nice and went to school clean every day. Young enjoyed going to school. At the time, he was allegedly good friends with future O Block member Prince Dre. Before the war, most of the kids in the Woodland neighborhood got along with each other. Young would eventually meet a kid by the name of DJ, later known as Dutchy, in the neighborhood. Dutchy lived on 63rd of South Roads. The two began hanging out and quickly became good friends. Dallin Stevens, also known as Dutchie, grew up in a house with his mother and older sister. His mother was very strict. She allegedly didn't hesitate putting hands on Dutchie. Sometimes Dutchie even ran from her. Dutchie jumped off the porch at an early age. He was known to use marijuana and fight other kids in the neighborhood. The kids in the neighborhood all looked up to Dutchie. He allegedly got his friends into trouble a lot growing up. Carlton Weekly, also known as FBG Duck, grew up on the low end in the Ida B. Wells projects. His mother Lashina Weekly had 10 kids including Duck. She was a single mother. Her oldest son Jermaine Robinson, also known as Brick, jumped off the porch at a very early age. Lashina had Brick when she was only 15 years old. According to Lashina, Brick and her were more like brother and sister than mother and child. Brick began running the streets at the age 11. He made a name for himself in the Ida B. Wells projects coming up. As a teenager, Brick was affiliated with a gangster disciple set by the name of the Beam Team. The Beam Team were known to be wild and trigger-happy. Around this time they was into it with a black disciple set by the name of Welch World. Brick hung around older gang members. They took a liking to his mature behavior. Brick was humble but vicious. The older guys respected him. At an early age, Brick did his best to help out his single mother and siblings. He allegedly robbed people, sold drugs, and did whatever else he had to do to survive. Times were hard for Lashina. For money, she would boost clothes with her friends. Around 2003, Lashina, along with her 10 kids, went to live with her grandmother on 63rd of St. Lawrence. 17 people all shared a 3-bedroom apartment. Lashina's grandmother was the backbone of a large family. She was known as the Queen of the Low End. According to Duck, his grandmother had a whole lot of money. Before her death in 2008, she moved from St. Lawrence. That caused Duck and other family members to follow. While living on St. Lawrence, Duck became friends with Dutchie, Young, and other familiar names from the neighborhood. Duck was getting in trouble at an early age. He was arrested several times as a teenager, but never spent any real time in jail. Most of Duck family members are gangster disciples. Duck refused to be anything else. He followed in his brother Brick's footsteps and began gang banging. Even before rapping, Duck loved to dance and perform. Many don't know that Duck was a good singer. His name comes from the 1991 classic film The Five Heartbeats. His mother Lashina was a huge fan of the movie and decided to give him actor Robert Townsend's character nickname. Jeff McGraw, also known as King Lil J, grew up on the low end. Lil J come from one of the biggest families in Chicago. The McGraws were a popular family filled with fighters, hustlers, and even killers. Lil J played football as a youth. He was fast and strong. People say that he was always aggressive and liked to fight. At an early age, Lil J was known to be a good fighter. He used to DJ at local parties. Him and his cousins had a dance group. At parties, they would show off their dance moves and pull all of the young ladies. He grew up a black disciple and lived between OBN and Welch World territory. OBN, meaning Oak Boy Nation, is a mostly black disciple set, and Welch World is a black disciple set. This is how him and Billionaire Black became good friends. Lattice Delphi, also known as Billionaire Black, was a gangster disciple from the gang Welch world. He lived on St. Lawrence before moving to the low end at the age 11. Billionaire Black grew up a hip-hop fan. His uncle was a local rapper who had a record contract with Rough Riders that only inspired Billy to rap even more. At the age 15, Lil J was homeless. He was forced to sleep wherever he could. Lil J began robbing people for money. People say that he was cutthroat and was hard to be trusted. Lil J began hanging out on St. Lawrence after allegedly robbing one of his close friends. He began hanging out with K.I. and Butter. At the time, K.I. and Butter were both members of the mostly GED set Jarrow City. Around this time, Jakira Barnes, also known as K.I., dressed like a normal teenage girl. Her and her twin brother G.I. Joe were close friends with guys such as Butter, Lil P, Can't Get Right, and other young future STL members. When K.I. wasn't running the streets with her friends, she would hang out with her mother around the house. The two would talk, listen to music, and joke around. K.I. and her mother was very close. K.I. had plans to be a social worker. She was a good student and made good grades at school. Rakeem Wilton, also known as Butter, was one of the wildest youngsters in the neighborhood at the time. He liked fighting and starting trouble with other kids. Before moving to 6451 Eberhart, Butter and his family lived in the Ida B. Wells projects in the same building as Duck and his family. Butter began claiming Jarrow City at an early age. Back then, Jarrow City wasn't just one huge gang. They were divided in different sets such as ABM, COB, The Outlaws, and Dark Side. Both Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples are a part of Jarrow City. The gang was formed back in 2005 when 22-year-old Jarvis Smith was killed at a house party. Around 2009, D-Thang and Lil Boo started a Black Disciple set by the name of 600. D-Thang and Lil Boo were both members of a Gangster Disciple set by the name of Brick City. The two decided to flip and become BDs, and a lot of other Brick City members did the same. Their territory is along Brick Alley on 59th and Calumet. Jarrow City and 600 were into it with each other before the birth of 600. Back in 2008, 600 leader D-Thang allegedly murdered Jarrow City member Hootie over a female. King Lil J wanted to be a member of 600, but he was already hanging out with Jarrow City members, and D-Thang didn't like that. He allegedly robbed Lil J and made him leave the block. Shondale Gregory, also known as Tuka, moved on St. Lawrence in 2008 along with his mother, sister, and older brother. Tuka grew up on the low end on 49th of Calumet. His father, Shondale Gregory Sr., was allegedly a gang member who lived in Parkway Gardens. He had a lot of kids by different women. Tuka wasn't alone, he had a bunch of brothers who lived in the neighborhood as well. Tuka spent a lot of time in Parkway Gardens. That's how he met young Wick City members such as Chief Keef, J Money, and even O.D. Perry. Tuka was a good fighter. Not only did he have fast hands, Tuka had the strength of a grown man. He was even a good wrestler and was a star on the school wrestling team. Everyone who knew Tuka say he was a ladies' man. Young females would often surround him, wielded by his charming smile. Tuka was well raised. He respected his elders and had good manners. Young's father, Manny, said that Tuka was one of the most respectful kids he ever met. Tristan Hamilton, also known as FBG Cash, is Young's older brother. Everyone called him TJ. Cash was the light of the house. He kept everyone at home laughing and smiling. Cash was also a good cook. Sometimes he would fix dinner for the family. By the age 15, Cash was running the streets. He began hanging out in Parkway Gardens with members of a gang by the name of Newtown. Cash allegedly began dating rapper Chief Keef's mother around this time. A teenage Cash had become a stick-up kid. Him and his crew allegedly went around robbing and even shooting people. According to Cash, Manny was disappointed when Cash told him about the first person he shot. The robbing and shooting eventually led Cash to prison at the age 18. He was sentenced to 6 years for armed robbery in 2009. In that same year, Dutchie and a guy by the name of C-Ball started a gangster disciple set by the name of STL. They recruited wild young teenagers from the neighborhood. Many members of STL were members of a gangster disciple set by the name of EBT. People such as C-Ball, Dutchie, Duck, Cray Cray, and Lil B all claimed EBT at first. EBT was a well-known set in the Woodland neighborhood. Since the mid-2000s, EBT members have been known to be killers. Couldn't just anyone claim EBT. You had to be tough and put in work. They were a serious set that didn't play around. In May of 2009, a guy by the name of Edric Tishon Walker, also known as Ty, was allegedly shot and killed by EBT members. Just like 600, STL inherited beef with other gangs. STL and EBT basically became one set. The younger members began getting into street brawls with other young members of Wick City and TYMB. STL were the aggressors most of the time. They all loved to fight. Duck was the ringleader when it came to fighting. He was known to be a hard hitter. Some people called him a bully. Even before gaining weight, Duck had people scared to fight him. Duck also brought a lot of mob members around. He had several cousins who were active members of the gangster disciples. Around this time, Buddy, Lil J, and K.I. had all began claiming STL. Tuka was the new kid on the block. His older brother was sent to boot camp. He was now all alone. STL members thought that he was from Wick City because he spent a lot of time over there visiting his father. Every day they would try to jump Tuka. The young gang would stand on the corner and wait for Tuka to come outside. A few times, Tuka's mother had to help him fight off the gang. She would use hot bleach water and a baseball bat to keep the gang off her son. Tuka's other brothers were even forced to get involved. This went on for a few months. STL members realized that Tuka and his family wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. Tuka began playing street football with Duck, Dutchie, Butta, and other STL members. The kids enjoyed wrestling around as well. Tuka accidentally chipped Dutchie's tooth when he slammed him. Everyone quickly took a liking to Tuka. He was a fun kid. Not only was he good at sports, he was hilarious as well. He kept everyone laughing. People loved being around him. By the summer of 2010, Tuka was a member of STL. He began participating in street brawls. Like I said earlier, Tuka was a good fighter. He allegedly beat up a lot of Wick City and TYMB members. Duck and Tuka became close friends. They began hanging out every day and even slept over at each other's houses. According to Duck, him and Tuka were like best friends. They fought together and even slept with females together. Tuka became popular in the neighborhood. On the morning of January 12, 2011, Tuka was sent home from school for disrespecting a teacher. Tuka go and hang out in the neighborhood until it was time for his wrestling match. He went back to the school for his wrestling match and won. Tuka was excited. He called and tell his brother the good news. Around 6 o'clock that evening, Tuka along with Lil P and several others were standing in front of the corner store. It was 25 degrees that day. According to Lil P, it was too cold to even be outside that day. They had just finished smoking and rapping at their hangout spot. It was too cold for Lil P. He decided to walk 2 blocks down to the public library to warm up. Tuka go and stand at the bus stop with 2 other people. At approximately 6:03 p.m. he calls his mother and tell her about his wrestling match at 6:04. He tell his mother that he's standing at the bus stop about to come home. Minutes later, a car filled with TYMB members allegedly ride past and see Tuka. It's alleged that Tuka threw up a gang sign. Shortly after, a guy wearing a hoodie walks up and asks when's the next bus coming. He go and stand next to Tuka. The guy shoots Tuka. Tuka falls to the ground. The guy stands over Tuka and shoot him 5 more times. The gunman ran and hopped in the back of a blue Chevy Malibu. The car speeds off. Lil P come running back after hearing the gunshots only to see his friend laying on the ground dead. At around 6:15, Tuka mom get the phone call that her son was shot. Her and her boyfriend rushed down to the bus stop. Dutchie, Duck, and other STL members all seen Tuka's lifeless body laying on the cold concrete. For almost 6 hours, family, friends, and neighbors stood outside in the cold. A riot even broke out. People were upset that the police kept Tuka's body at the scene for so long. Didn't no one leave until Tuka's body was taken away. Tuka was only 15 years old. To honor Tuka, STL began calling 63rd of St. Lawrence Tukaville. The gangster disciples in the neighborhood wanted revenge for Tuka. Other sets such as Jaro City, Mob, and EBT began helping STL slide for Tuka. This is when STL began putting in work. People such as Dutchie, Butta, King Lil J, Lil B, Duck, Brick, and Bostrel made STL one of the strongest sets in the Woodland neighborhood. This was the beginning of Tuka Gang. Rodney Stewart, also known as Bostrel, lived with his mother Taff at 6347th St. Lawrence. Taff is originally from the low end. She moved to St. Lawrence in the mid-2000s. Taff had 2 other sons as well. Her oldest son, Ray, was the first to jump off the porch. He joined a renegade gang by the name of Laffa. Ray became an own shooter at an early age. A young Bostrel couldn't wait to follow in his big brother footsteps. Bostrel began living with his grandmother when he was 10 years old. Many say he was a smart kid. Around 2009, Bostrel began spending more time on St. Lawrence at his mother's place. Taff and Duck's mother Lashina were good friends. They called each other sisters. Bostrel and Duck were like cousins. Bostrel began dealing drugs at an early age. Taff was a hustler as well. Her apartment building became a crack house. Taff apartment was a hangout spot for the young gang members. People such as Brick, Dutchie, Butter, Young, and Duck all hung out at Taff's. Bostrel began making good money. Not only did he buy clothes, sneakers, and jewelry, he invested in guns and gun accessories as well. At the time, STL was low on guns. Members were sliding with a .25 automatic handgun with no magazine and only one bullet. After Tooker's death, more shootouts and fights took place in the neighborhood. Everyone had to choose a side. There was no more hanging out in other neighborhoods. The young gang members were forced to cut off close friends and family members from the other side. Their gang was now their family. In April of that year, Chief Keef along with 600 members E-Day and S-Dot released their music video Hustle Hard on YouTube. Days before releasing the Hustle Hard video, E-Day released the What Up video, both shot by Prince Films. Both videos began attracting attention. That motivated Young and Dutchie to make music. Most of the STL members were already rapping for fun. The only one who took it serious at first was Billionaire Black. Billionaire Black was experienced in the studio. He released his first video titled I Swear back in 2010. Months later, Billy released another video, Trust Me, featuring his childhood friend Sachigo Har. Billy taught Duck, Lil J, and others a lot about making music. Billy even recorded a song with Lil Durk when he was a member of Welch World. The song now can't be found, and it was only heard by a few people. Billionaire Black and Duck became good friends around 2010 when Billy was still claiming Welch World. Shortly after Tooker's death, Billy began claiming STL. Him and his younger brother Muscle had allegedly put in a lot of work for Welch World. According to Billy, all he did as a teen was rob and shoot people. Him and his brothers were all wild. His baby brother Lee Clater, known as Richie Jerk, followed Billy and began hanging out with the younger STL and Jaro City members. This was before the birth of Taekwon World. Meanwhile, Young and Dutchie come up with the name FBG because there was another crew at school who was going by the name GMG at the time. FBG, meaning Fly Boy Gang, represents Young Fly Gangsters. The name sounded good to the STL members. They decided to all have numbers as if they were on a basketball team. Young was number 1 because he basically created the name and image. Dutchie number 2 because he was Young's right-hand man. Duck number 3 and Billionaire Black's number 4. A month after E-Day released Hustle Hard and What Up, he released a STL diss track titled Def the Other Side. That same month, FBG Duck recorded and released this song titled Wild Out using the same beat they used for F the Other Side. These were some of the first diss songs in drill history. That summer, Young and Dutchie released their first YouTube music video titled Hitta Music. At the time, Dutchie went by the name DJ and Young went by Mello. The two diss rival gangs such as TYMB, Wick City, and 600. The video didn't get many views. Meanwhile, Chief Keef videos were getting hundreds, thousands of views. He was becoming the biggest underground rapper in Chicago. On August 11th of that year, STL along with Mob, Jaro City, and EBT all came together to celebrate Tuka's birthday. He would have turned 16 years old. That same day, Duck shot his third music video titled Freestyle. Later that night, after abusing drugs and alcohol, the gangs were ready to slide on any op. Wick City members O.D. Perry and B.J. were allegedly spotted going to a nearby store. They were allegedly riding bicycles. STL and the other gangs were quickly informed. Members began rushing over to King Drive. Bostrel, Duck, and a few others all allegedly hopped in a silver-colored vehicle and drove over there. They allegedly parked the car near AutoZone and hopped out. As they hop out, BJ and OD come riding their bicycles down the street. A 16-year-old Bostrel allegedly began firing shots. Perry gets hit in the neck and buttocks. BJ allegedly escapes and make it back to Parkway Gardens. OD was rushed to Stridger Hospital and was pronounced dead at 12:08 in the morning. He was 20 years old. Several witnesses would later identify Bostrel as the shooter. Even one of Bostrel's friends later told the police that it was Bostrel and K.I. who killed O.D. Perry. After the death of O.D. Perry, Parkway Gardens became even darker. O.D. was really loved in Parkway. He had put in a whole lot of work for the Wick City Black Disciple Gang. To honor O.D. Perry, Wick City changed their name to O Block. The neighborhood was never the same. O Block knew that STL were involved in OD's murder. They just didn't know who was the actual shooter. 1 month after Perry's death, Bostrel along with Jaro City member Dome allegedly shot and killed 18-year-old 600 leader D-Thang. Dome was later charged with the murder and was sentenced to only 11 years in prison. Dome didn't snitch on Bostrel. Bostrel would later continue his killing spree. In November of that year, Chief Keef released another underground hit titled Dame That You. The song reached close to 1 million views within days. In that same month, FBG members Duck, Billionaire Black, and Dutchie released a video titled Def T.O. meaning F the Ops. The video didn't get many views. At the time, most of FBG fans were other gangster disciples in the neighborhood. Chief Keef music and videos both had better quality. His style was more original as well. It was clear that Chief Keef was going to be a star. Sosa was really in the street sliding as well. After O.D. Perry was killed, Chief Keef wanted revenge on STL. One day, him along with Lil Reese and Fredo Santana went to Rhodes Avenue shooting at STL and Jaro City members. A few people were even shot in the incident. But it was allegedly one of the people who was shot. The war was real. At the time, fans thought that it was only a huge rap battle going on between different crews. Most fans didn't really understand the drill culture until 2012.